Guys, Mr. Halpin here. Today what I want to do is I just want to take a moment and I want to go over chunk number 3 of your study guide. Well, let's get started, guys. So right here, problems in the Republic. The major issue that we have right now in the Republic is the gap between the rich and the poor. It's growing wider and wider and wider. There's more people who are becoming extremely poor, and the rich, they're becoming so much more rich around this time. So as we know, most people in the Roman society, they were plebeians who owned just very small plots of land. The issue is when they were fighting in the Carthaginian War, many of these people's farms were destroyed, and they weren't tending their farms because they were fighting in the war. And as a result, they did not have crops growing, and they were not making money. On the other hand, we have a very small group of people who own a huge portion of land. The portion of land that they owned is called the Lochteum. It was just a very large farming estate. Now, what they were able to do is they were able to actually take people who were captured in the Carthaginian War, and they forced them to work their farms for free. And as a result, they were making more and more and more money, and the poor could not compete with them in any way. So the poor ended up having to lose their farms when the Lochteum would then buy those people's farms on the cheap, and they would get more and more land. Now, because of this, all these small farms shut down. Many people left the countryside and they moved into the city. And when they moved into the city, they faced a similar problem. Most of the jobs were taken by Carthaginian slave labor. Now, again, the Romans, they were smart. And they did not want to revolt, and they could see that there were some issues that were going on, and so what they did is they would give them cheap food and entertainment to try to satisfy them and to not make them revolt against the government. Next, we got the Roman reformers, this paragraph right here. Not everyone just completely ignored the problems too, or tried to appease them with simple tricks such as food and entertainment. We have Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. They're two brothers who wanted to stop the wealthy from taking over small farms to create their latifundia. They urged and they asked the Senate to make sure to take land from the latifundia and return it to the poor. Now, many of the Senate, they were part of this latifundia and they hated this idea. They absolutely despised it. In the next paragraph right here, Roman politics and the army. We begin to see a shift in the military. More specifically, Marius, a general, believed he could solve the economic problems. He transformed the army to provide opportunities for the poor. Up until then, only property owners were able to serve in the army. Marius, however, recruited soldiers from the landless poor. In return for their service, he paid them wages and promised them land. Ultimately, this is a really good thing for those poor farmers, but it does have a major issue with it. More specifically, instead of being loyal to the Republic, these people all of a sudden who are getting jobs from Marius, they remain loyal to him. And they remain loyal to generals instead of to the Republic itself. Now, there soon became someone who began to challenge Marius. And this person was Sola. We can see Sola right here. Sola commanded his own army. Now, Sola actually drove his enemies out of Rome and named himself dictator for life. It marked the first time a Roman general had led his army into the capital. Over the next 3 years, Sola made many changes to the government. He reduced the power of the tribunes and gave the senators more and more responsibilities. Sola then decided he wanted to step down as dictator, and he hoped those reforms would restore the Republic to the early glory days of Rome. It didn't, though. The next person I want to talk to you a minute about is Julius Caesar. I absolutely love Julius Caesar. He's one of, I think, the most interesting leaders Rome's ever had. And he's a member of the original triumvirate. Now, there are 3 different people who are part of this triumvirate. We have Crassus. Again, we've already been over the one. We have Caesar. And we have Pompey. These 3 men, they make up a triumvirate, which is, again, just a political group in which 3 people share equal power over Rome. Every single one of these men, and again, I'm going to repeat it one more time, that way you don't forget it. We have Crassus, we have Pompey, and we have Caesar. They each control their own piece of land. Now, ultimately, we eventually have one of our main people die. Specifically, Crassus, he dies in battle. You can see that right here. And that means we have 2 people left of the triumvirate. We have Caesar and we have Pompey. Now, People ended up the poor ended up becoming loyal to Caesar, and they began to like him because he treated them very, very well, and the Senate didn't like this. So they ended up backing Pompey, and they ended up saying, Caesar, you need to give up your army and you need to return to Rome. Caesar was smart, though. He knew if he just returned to Rome, he was likely going to be killed. So he said, I'm not going to do that. Instead, he decided he's going to march his army back to Rome, and that's exactly what he did, which is where we get into this next paragraph right here. Caesar marched his army back into Rome, and then Caesar finally crushed Pompey's army in Greece in 48 BC, and Caesar became the sole ruler of Rome, or the dictator for life, as you can see right here. Dictator for life. Now, to strengthen his power, he appointed people to the Senate who actually supported him in these reforms. Now, Caesar did a couple of really, really big things. You can see some of his big accomplishments right here. First, he introduced reforms that made him popular to people living in the territory. More specifically, he created jobs for the unemployed. In the countryside, he organized new settlements for the landless poor. He ordered landowners using slave labor to hire more free workers. In addition to that, he also created a calendar that we actually used for thousands of years. We don't use it anymore, but we did for a long time. We used it until the year 1582 AD. So very, very long time we used Caesar's calendar. And it's actually formed the basis of our own calendar. It had 12 months with 365 days and a leap year, which sounds very similar, at least it should, because that's very similar to our own calendar. Now, eventually, Caesar was killed by a group of senators led by Brutus and Caius, plotted to kill him. In the year 44 BC, he was assassinated. This day is known as the Ides of March. Now, after Caesar's death, there was a civil war that broke out. Everyone was trying to fight for power, but one person really emerged. His name, or a few people emerged, excuse me. One person was Octavian, who was joined by Caesar's top generals, Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus. The three leaders forced defeats those who had killed Caesar. In the year 43 BC, they formed the Second Triumvirate. So let me repeat those names one more time. We have Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. And again, like their previous triumvirate, they divided up the land equally amongst them three. Again, Antony ruled in Greece, Lepidus took charge of North Africa, and Octavian took command of Italy and the West. Now, this didn't last long, these three people ruling together. Eventually what we have is Lepidus. He retired from politics. And when there's only two people, all of a sudden you're going to have conflict between those two people. Soon Octavian and Antony, they became bitter rivals. Antony fell in love with the Egyptian queen known as Cleopatra. Together they formed an alliance. Now Octavian, he saw that this alliance was being formed, and he began to spread a rumor that they were going to conquer the Republic or overthrow the Republic and make themselves co-rulers of Rome. And people were really nervous about this. So they ended up agreeing to back Octavian's claim to go to war versus Antony. Now, ultimately, in the year 31 BC, Octavian and Antony's navies clashed off the coast of Greece. At the Battle of Lochteum, Octavian's forces defeated those of Antony and Cleopatra. After this, Octavian captured Alexandria. Now, ultimately, what happens from here, and this is sounds a little bit confusing, but I promise it's not that confusing. Antony heard a false rumor that Cleopatra had died, and he killed himself when he heard this. Then Cleopatra killed herself in response to his death. Octavian became the now supreme ruler of Rome. The war had ended. Now this paragraph right here, it is super important. Octavian, a new direction. Octavian could have made himself a lifelong dictator. Publicly, Octavian voiced his support for the Republic. Privately, he felt differently. He thought that a republican government was too weak to solve Rome's problems. Octavian felt they needed a strong leader, with a strong and loyal army supporting Octavian. The Senate consented to his wishes. Octavian became the first emperor or all-powerful ruler of Rome. This shifts Rome from a republic to an empire all of a sudden. So Octavian is the first emperor. Rome becomes an empire instead of a republic. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. We'll talk to you later.